Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. I never thought closing a gate would spark a full-blown war, but in the quiet hills of Colorado, that's exactly what happened. One lock, one camera, and one HOA president with a god complex turned my private road into a legal battleground. They wanted a fight. They picked the wrong guy. I never thought opening a gate could trigger a 911 call, but that's exactly how this all started. It was a bright, dry morning in the foothills of Colorado. Crisp mountain air, just a hint of pine and dust, the kind of day that makes you feel like you made all the right choices in life. I just finished installing the final component of my new automatic gate system, a sturdy steel swing gate with coded access, cameras with plate recognition, and a reinforced base that would stop anything short of a tank. For the first time since inheriting the land from my uncle, I felt like I had real control over the property. 6 acres of old gravel road, a hillside view, and no damn HOA telling me where I could or couldn't build a shed. The road in question wasn't much to look at, just a gravel easement, overgrown at the edges, with a mild incline and a bend through scrub oak. But legally, it was mine. Not mine as in, I like to think it's mine. I mean mine, deeded, registered, documented, and fully private ever since the easement was annulled back in the late 90s. The old-timers used to take this shortcut from Silver Willows, the nearby HOA-run McMansion nest, to cut over to Highway 37. But that ended when my uncle had the easement officially revoked. Still, like all bad habits, the neighborhood never let it go. So when I closed that gate for the first time, it was a moment of quiet satisfaction. I even took a picture and texted it to my buddy Eric, who helped me weld the frame. "Let's see him try to roll through now," I wrote. 15 minutes later, I got a different kind of message. A pounding knock on the front door, then another, then voices, raised, agitated. I stepped outside, still wearing work gloves and a sweat-stained baseball cap, and found 2 sheriff's deputies standing stiffly on the porch. One older, one younger, both looking like they expected trouble, hands hovering just near their belts. "You Matt Andrews?" the older one asked. "Sure am," I said, wiping my hands on my jeans. "Everything okay?" "We got a call," he said, squinting at me. "Neighbor says you've blocked off public road access and created a potential emergency hazard." I blinked. "Wait, what?" The younger one added, "Caller claimed this road is the only access point for emergency vehicles to get to Silver Willows. Said you locked it without notifying the HOA." Exhaled sharply, already knowing exactly who the caller was. "Let me guess," I said. "Karen Hurling." Blonde Bob, expensive sunglasses, believes clipboards equal legal authority. They exchanged a look. Bingo. I motioned toward the edge of the property. "Come on, let me show you something." We walked down to the gate together, and I pulled a folder from the box mounted on the post. Copies of the deed, the revocation of easement from 1998, and the official county map. The road was highlighted in yellow, clearly enclosed in my parcel with a big red stamp. Private, no access. I handed the older officer the papers. "My name's on the deed. This gate is on my land. Always has been." There's a main road to Silver Willows that comes in from the east, with fire lanes and access codes. This gravel road hasn't been part of the emergency route since Clinton was in office. He read over the documents in silence, then looked up and said, "You're telling me the HOA doesn't own or maintain this road?" "They never have," I said. "But they've used it anyway, like squatters with SUVs." The younger deputy tilted his head. "Why now? Why close it off?" I gestured to the camera on the pole. "Last week, I had 4 different cars use this road. 2 left garbage bags. 1 ran over a rabbit. The last one nearly hit my dog. And every one of them was a Silver Willows plate. So I'm done. This is private land, not a shortcut." They went quiet for a moment. I could see the wheels turning. This wasn't what they'd expected. No angry man with a shotgun. No barricade of broken-down trucks. Just a well-prepared property owner with paperwork. The older deputy nodded. "All right. Far as I can tell, this looks solid. No crime here." "Nope," I said. "Though I'd say filing a false emergency report comes pretty close." The younger one scratched the back of his head. "Yeah, we'll note that. And maybe suggest she not use 911 for land disputes." They thanked me and walked back to the cruiser. As they pulled away, I saw one of them glance toward the gate again. That look said it all. Karen had wasted their time, but they didn't say it. Not out loud. An hour later, I checked the camera log. Sure enough, 35 minutes before the deputies arrived, Karen had pulled up in her white Lexus, stood at the gate fuming for all of 15 seconds, and then whipped out her phone. 10 seconds later, she peeled away in a cloud of self-righteous dust. That night, I added another lock to the gate, just in case. A week passed, quiet as a loaded gun. I kept waiting for something, a knock, a letter, a flaming bag on the porch, but nothing came. The gate stood firm, cameras intact, locks untouched. For a while, I let myself believe Karen had taken the hint. Maybe the paperwork had been enough. Maybe, just maybe, this would end like an adult disagreement. And then the envelope arrived. It came by courier, which already set off alarm bells. People don't send flowers by certified delivery. The guy looked bored as hell as he handed me the manila envelope, had me sign for it, and disappeared down the hill without another word. The return address was a Denver law firm, one of those fancy outfits that only show up in real estate wars and rich people divorces. Inside was a neatly stapled 8-page letter from the attorneys representing Silver Willows Homeowners Association. The first sentence nearly made me laugh out loud. We write to address your unlawful obstruction of a shared-use access road essential to public safety and community harmony. Public safety, community harmony? These people were using my land as a personal shortcut, and now suddenly I'm the villain. The letter went on to demand I immediately remove the unauthorized structure, blocking what they claimed was an historically recognized access route vital to HOA operations and emergency response. They cited irrelevant local ordinances, tossed, around phrases like prescriptive easement and community reliance, and then threatened to take me to civil court if the gate wasn't dismantled within 14 days. I set the letter down and just stared at it for a while. It wasn't anger I felt, more like cold, measured insult. They knew what they were doing. This wasn't ignorance. This was a bluff, a power play. They were hoping I'd fold just to avoid the hassle. What they didn't know was that I used to write these kinds of letters. Back when I worked at the Department of Transportation, I handled infrastructure disputes, boundary arguments, even litigated right-of-way cases for the state. I'd spent 15 years buried in deeds, plats, and precedent. And I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just a weak legal move. It was a provable lie. I grabbed my own folder, the one with the thick red sticker that read Chain of Title. Inside were copies of every land transfer from the 70s onward. In 1998, my uncle had filed the revocation of easement at the county registrar's office. It was signed, stamped, and properly recorded. There was even a notarized letter from the president of the HOA back then, acknowledging receipt of the revocation. If Silver Willows wanted to talk about historical recognition, they were about to get a lesson in legal history they'd never forget. I called my attorney, Rachel Diaz, a no-nonsense bulldog out of Boulder who once sued a ski resort into bankruptcy for misusing a forest access road. I'd worked with her back in my DOT days. I explained the situation, forwarded the HOA letter, and sent over my documentation. She called back that afternoon, and I could practically hear her grinning through the phone. They picked the wrong guy to threaten with land use law, she said. You want to go to war? Only if they start it, I replied. She drafted a formal response on firm letterhead and emailed it to their counsel that night. It included the revocation deed, annotated property maps, a breakdown of the Colorado revised statutes on private easement rights, and a final paragraph that made me smile. Any further unauthorized use of Mr. Andrew's private road shall be considered trespass under Colorado law and will be pursued accordingly. We sent it certified mail the next day. By Friday, I had confirmation they'd received it. No reply, but silence didn't mean surrender. That weekend, I noticed 3 different HOA vehicles slow roll past the gate, same time each morning around 8. One of them even stopped and took pictures. A black Mercedes with the vanity plate KWLADY1. I didn't need a name tag to know who was behind the wheel. I installed a second trail cam in the tree line, angled low, infrared enabled, motion triggered. I knew better than to trust official resolution. People like Karen don't back off. They circle, they test, and eventually they push. So I waited and watched and reinforced the gate, because if they wanted to start something, they were going to have to earn it. It happened at 2:46 in the morning. I only knew the time because my phone pinged with a notification from the new trail cam, motion detected. At first, I didn't think much of it. A deer, maybe a coyote. I live in rural Colorado. Things wander, but then another alert followed 10 seconds later, then another. I sat up, opened the live feed, and there they were. Two figures in hoodies and gloves, one holding bolt cutters, the other swinging a flashlight like he was casing a warehouse. They walked straight to the gate, barely even looking around. The first guy clipped the chain in one clean snap. The second man pulled it loose and tossed it into the ditch like a candy wrapper. Then they climbed back into their dusty old pickup and rolled right through. I watched them disappear around the bend, headlights bouncing off the gravel like nothing about this was illegal or insane. My stomach dropped. It wasn't just trespassing now. It was a planned intrusion. These weren't teenagers on a dare. This was intentional, deliberate, organized. I got dressed and walked out with my pistol holstered, not to wave around, just comfort. I scanned the gate, the trees, the road. Chain, gone. Lock, gone. Fresh tire tracks and muddy boot prints led away from the gate like a trail of breadcrumbs. I didn't follow them. I didn't need to. This was already evidence. When the sun came up, I went out to survey the road. About 70 yards in, just past a bend, someone had dumped 3 large bags of construction debris, plaster, insulation, broken tiles. Alongside it were 2 cinder blocks stacked in the middle of the drive like they were marking territory. A piss stake of suburban arrogance. I photographed everything. Drone footage, trail cam captures, a slow pan with my phone narrating time, date, location. Then I called the sheriff's department. It didn't go how I expected. The dispatcher seemed uninterested the moment I said the word trespassing. When I explained it involved HOA members from Silver Willows and provided the footage, she said, "Okay, an officer will be in touch." 3 hours later, no one had called. So I followed up. This time I was patched to a deputy, one I hadn't met before. "Yeah," he said, sounding almost annoyed. "We've reviewed the footage, but there's no way to verify identity. Hooded figures, poor lighting. We can't exactly arrest a shadow." I told him the truck had a plate, clearly visible, Colorado tags ending in QF7. He paused. "Well, even so, proving intent's tricky. Maybe they thought they had a right to access. Maybe they were helping clean up after storm debris. Who's to say?" I bit my tongue hard. Is that what we're doing now? Interpreting illegal dumping as charitable outreach? He didn't laugh. When I pressed harder, I got the soft warning. "Look, sir, these neighbor disputes can escalate fast. Maybe it's better to work it out with the HOA before things get uglier." And there it was, the subtext. Later that evening, I did some checking. A buddy of mine at the DMV owed me a favor. I gave him the plate number. 10 minutes later, I had a name. Darren Blaylock. Registered address, Silver Willows. I looked him up. Board member, HOA treasurer, golf shirt in every picture. Guy looked like the human version of an online return policy. I called Rachel, my lawyer, and sent her the footage, the plate info, and the debris photos. She didn't hesitate. "We're filing a police complaint anyway. If they bury it, we go above them." I filed the report, submitted all evidence, and asked to speak to a supervisor. I was told someone would follow up within 72 hours. 72 hours passed. No follow-up. Then I got a text. From a number I didn't recognize. It just said, "Better stop pushing. Not everyone's afraid of courtrooms." No signature, but I didn't need one. This wasn't about a road anymore. This was war. It didn't take long for the mask to slip. 2 days after the silent treatment from the sheriff's office, I noticed my mailbox hanging open. No mail inside, just a rolled-up flyer shoved halfway in. I pulled it out. Black and white, cheap printer paper, no official branding. Just bold, all-caps lettering that read, "Dangerous road closure. Property owner jeopardizes community safety." Below that was a photo of my gate, taken from the hill above with a zoom lens, and a paragraph accusing me of reckless obstruction of a historic emergency access route used by residents and first responders. No mention of my name. But come on, who else had just installed a gate on a gravel road with a no trespassing sign bolted into the frame? At the bottom, report concerns to the HOA board. Attend the emergency community meeting this Sunday. I laughed. Then I crumpled the flyer and tossed it into the trash. But curiosity got the better of me. I logged into Facebook and searched Silver Willows HOA. Found their group in seconds. It was private, of course, but the public header photo caught my attention. A stock image of a family waving at a fire truck. Subtle. I created a burner profile and sent a join request. Got approved within an hour. Inside was a circus. There were photos of my gate posted by multiple people. Comments ranged from confused to furious. One guy claimed his pregnant wife almost panicked when she had to take the longer route to the grocery store. Another said I'd deliberately endangered children by cutting off escape access during fire season. Several users tagged Karen, thanking her for taking a stand. Karen responded to each one with the same patronizing script. We are doing everything we can to keep the community safe. Safe from what? Private property rights? I kept scrolling, half out of morbid curiosity, half looking for anything legally actionable. And then I saw it. Karen had posted a screenshot of an email exchange with the fire department. It was cropped, selective, and edited just enough to make it look like the department had serious concerns about emergency access. I recognized the fire marshal's name. I'd worked with him years ago. So I called him. Hey, Rick, I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. Quick question. Did you guys send a notice to the Silver Willows HOA about emergency access concerns on my property? Rick exhaled. Oh, that nonsense. So, no, they hadn't. Karen had sent them a letter demanding a site inspection, and they'd politely declined, stating that Silver Willows has full emergency ingress and egress from the main paved road. No delays, no hazards. But Rick added, funny thing, she asked if she could forward our email to reassure concerned residents. Didn't realize she was going to crop it like that. That night, I received a knock on the door. A man in his 60s stood on my porch, visibly uncomfortable, introduced himself as Thomas Krieger, longtime resident of Silver Willows, said he'd been on the HOA board a few years back before Karen took over. I don't mean to bother you, he said, eyes darting like he expected to be followed, but I just wanted to say, not all of us agree with what she's doing. I stepped outside and crossed my arms. I'm listening. She's trying to turn the whole community against you, he said. Says you're blocking an easement, threatening safety, trying to destroy neighborhood unity. But people are starting to ask questions. He pulled a folded paper from his coat pocket. It was the HOA's last meeting minutes. Scribbled at the bottom in Karen's handwriting was a line. Initiate code enforcement. Use nuisance clause if gate remains. Then, in parentheses, contact Code Officer Martin if sheriff won't act. Krieger looked me in the eye. I thought you should know. She's not done. I thanked him and walked back inside, locking the door behind me. I was being boxed in, socially smeared, legally poked, and now targeted through code enforcement. And if I knew Karen, and I was starting to know her very well, this was just her opening act. So I made some calls. First, to Rachel, I told her we needed to prepare for a zoning inspection ambush. Then to a tech friend in Denver who specialized in surveillance hardware. I wanted more eyes, discreet ones. And finally, to the county planning office. I requested all current public works filings from Silver Willows, including infrastructure requests, easement claims, and recent grant applications, because if Karen wanted a war of optics and paper trails, fine. But I was going to follow the trail deeper, and I had a hunch it would lead somewhere rotten. If Karen thought I'd sit quietly while she rewrote the truth with flyers and Facebook comments, she had seriously miscalculated. The following Monday, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. A gruff voice on the other end introduced himself as Mike Langston, Code Enforcement, Jefferson County. He didn't waste time. We received a complaint about an unpermitted structure, specifically a security gate obstructing an access road, he said flatly. I'll be out this week for a site inspection. I exhaled slowly. You do realize this gate's on private land and well within the parcel boundaries, right? Not to mention legally permitted. There was a pause. That's what we're going to determine. I didn't argue. No point. If this was Karen's doing, and of course it was just another way to rattle the cage. So I called Rachel and gave her the heads up. She was already one step ahead. I filed a notice with the county last week, she said, citing your survey, the 1998 revocation, and confirming the county's own parcel maps. If they show up, you show them the documents. No need to argue. I spent the rest of the day prepping. Set out copies of every document in a binder, flagged with neon tabs like a prosecutor's portfolio. I even printed enlarged versions of the county parcel map and mounted them on foam board. Petty? Maybe. But effective. Langston showed up Thursday morning in a white county pickup, clipboard in hand, and an expression like he'd rather be anywhere else. I met him at the gate, documents ready, smile restrained. Here's everything you'll need, I said, handing him the binder, surveyed, recorded, and cross-checked with your office's own GIS database. He thumbed through the pages, stopping at the revocation deed. I watched his eyebrows lift slightly. He said nothing, just kept reading. Then he looked up at the gate, the signs, the camera mounted above. "You installed this yourself?" he asked. "With licensed contractors. Receipts included." He nodded once, flipped to the last page, then back to the map. After a long silence, he handed it all back. "From what I see here, you're in compliance." "No violations?" I asked. He shook his head. "Nope. But I'll have to file a report with the complaint attached. It'll be a matter of record." I didn't mind. A record of compliance was just more ammo if this ever made it to court. "Off the record," Langston added as he climbed into his truck. "Don't know what their problem is. This land's clearly not HOA territory." As he drove off, I spotted a familiar SUV parked halfway up the next hill. White Lexus. Karen. Watching from a distance like some suburban warlord surveying a battlefront. I gave the camera pole a little pat and went back inside. That afternoon, my contact at the county planning office emailed me the files I'd requested. It took hours to go through it all, but buried in the infrastructure grant filings was something that made my stomach drop. Silver Willows had applied for county maintenance funds 3 times in the last 5 years. In each application, they'd included a map with a road labeled Community Emergency Access Route, the very same gravel road that ran across my land. More than that, they'd submitted maintenance logs, repairs, grading, snow clearance, performed by HOA volunteers, all fabricated. That road hadn't been touched by anyone but my uncle and me in 20 years. Then I saw it. Attached to one of the filings was a letter, dated 4 years ago, supposedly signed by my uncle. It stated that he authorized public access via the easement road in perpetuity. Only, I knew that wasn't true. My uncle died 5 years ago, and the signature. It was a shaky, half-familiar mess, probably forged from some old neighborhood holiday card. I called Rachel immediately. "They submitted a forged statement," I said, claiming my uncle gave them permanent access, and they used it to get money from the county. She didn't even curse, just said, "Good. Now we've got fraud." I stared at the forged letter for a long time. This wasn't petty anymore. It wasn't just a suburban turf war over a gravel road. Karen and her little HOA regime had filed fraudulent grant requests, forged legal documents, and used them to redirect public funds. This was criminal, and I was done playing defense. I didn't sleep that night. My brain kept replaying the signature, the way the J slumped, the last name misshapen like a bad copy job. I'd seen my uncle's handwriting on 1,000 documents. That wasn't it. And the thought of his name being used like that, years after his death, to commit fraud, it turned my stomach. By morning, I had a plan. This wasn't just about reclaiming my property anymore. It was about exposing the whole rotten core. First, I dug out an old box from the attic, my uncle's files. He'd been meticulous, the kind of guy who never threw out a receipt. I found the original 1998 revocation documents, and next to them, a notarized letter he'd sent to the HOA at the time, stating explicitly that no further access via the gravel road shall be granted under any circumstances. Dated, signed, stamped. Then I went digital. I pulled up the county grant database and cross-referenced their entries with regional maintenance requests. Silver Willows had claimed thousands of dollars in county-funded improvements on land they didn't own. On my road. Snowplow reimbursements, drainage upgrades, gravel restoration. Some of the entries were copied and pasted word for word from other applications. Lazy fraud. By noon, I was in Rachel's office, binder under one arm and USB drive in the other. She spread everything out on her conference table like a crime scene. Halfway through reading, she picked up her phone and called a contact at the district attorney's office. "We're filing a formal fraud complaint," she said. "They've used falsified documents to obtain public funds." While she worked the legal side, I went to see Rick, the fire marshal. I brought coffee and screenshots. He let me in without question. "Remember that cropped email Karen shared?" I asked. Rick nodded. "Yeah, my phone's been blowing up ever since." I showed him the HOA's application packet. His face darkened as he scanned the forged letter from my uncle. "Jesus," he muttered. "She used this to claim emergency access rights?" "Not only that," I said. "She claimed you supported the route as essential infrastructure." Rick took out his own phone and opened his email archive. Within a minute, he found the original chain. He printed it and signed the hard copy. adding a statement at the bottom. This document was altered and misrepresented without consent. Then he scanned it, signed again digitally, and emailed it to both me and Rachel. "Take her down," he said. "You've got the ammunition." I left his office buzzing with adrenaline and something close to satisfaction. But the day wasn't over. That evening, as I pulled into my driveway, I saw flashing lights. A police cruiser idled near the edge of my property. I parked, got out, and approached carefully. An officer stepped out, young, clean-cut, polite. "Mr. Andrews." "That's me." "We received a report of an aggressive confrontation with a neighbor. Name of the complainant, Karen Hurling. She alleges you threatened her near the shared access road." I blinked. "You're kidding." He didn't flinch. "I'm required to follow up." I pulled out my phone and opened the camera app. "I've got continuous surveillance footage on the entire road. There's been no contact." He nodded. "Mind if we take a look?" 10 minutes later, we stood in my office watching the time-stamped playback. Nothing. No Karen. No confrontation. Just birds, wind, and my truck rolling in. The officer took notes, then radioed in. "Looks clear. False report," he said, then turned to me. "Apologies for the inconvenience, sir." After he left, I stared at the gate monitor for a long time. Karen wasn't just reacting anymore. She was flailing, making things up, throwing legal Hail Marys. But I wasn't the one boxed in. Not anymore. The silence didn't last long. 2 days after the false police call, I received a letter. Not an email. Not a notice. A real certified envelope hand-delivered and stamped with the HOA's official letterhead. It was a final notice of non-compliance, accusing me of creating hazardous obstruction to community infrastructure and threatening to file a civil suit on behalf of the homeowners of Silver Willows. It would have been funny if it weren't so. Methodical. This wasn't Karen just lashing out. It was strategy. A desperate one, sure, but strategy all the same. Someone had helped her draft this letter, likely the HOA's in-house attorney. They were attempting to build a paper trail, make me look like a serial offender refusing to cooperate with reasonable neighborhood guidelines. Problem is, I wasn't part of their neighborhood. Never was. Never signed anything. My land predates Silver Willows by nearly 3 decades. I scanned the document and forwarded it to Rachel. She replied within 20 minutes. "They're trying to bait you into a response they can use against you. Don't bite. I'll issue a formal cease and desist tomorrow." That night, I sat at my desk staring at the easement map. My uncle had redrawn the parcel boundaries by hand after the revocation was finalized in 1998, carefully marking the end of the old access agreement. The more I studied it, the more I realized something else. The HOA hadn't just been using my road for access. Their new utility lines, water, internet, even a small drainage runoff had been slowly extended past their boundary, onto my land. I verified it the next morning, walking the southern edge of my property with a GPS app and a copy of the official survey. There it was, a drainage pipe installed maybe 3 years ago, running straight through my land, unmarked, undocumented. At least 10 feet past their legal edge. I took pictures, measured the placement, cross-referenced the installation year with the grant filings I'd reviewed earlier. Sure enough, there it was. HOA application dated January 3 years ago, requesting county funds for community drainage upgrades to shared access route. I didn't even bother calling Karen. This wasn't a phone call situation anymore. It was a lawsuit waiting to happen. Rachel filed the cease and desist as promised and followed it up with a notice of pending litigation for unauthorized infrastructure intrusion and grant fraud. She CC'd the county records office, the district attorney's fraud division, and the county zoning board. Things moved fast after that. Within 48 hours, I got a call from a county investigator named Amanda Cho. Calm, professional, curious. She wanted to confirm land ownership, get access to my evidence, and schedule a walkthrough. When she arrived, she brought a deputy and a county surveyor. They spent 2 hours on site, mapping everything, photographing the drainage, inspecting the gate, and confirming my documentation. Amanda was careful with her words, but didn't hide her expression when we reached the pipe. "This could be serious," she said, jotting notes. "And if this was used to apply for public funds." It was. She nodded. "We'll be in touch very soon." That night, the Facebook group for Silver Willows lit up like a wildfire. Someone had leaked news of the investigation. Residents were suddenly a lot less supportive of Karen. One post in particular caught my eye, someone accusing her of overstepping and jeopardizing all our property values. The comment thread turned savage fast. Some defended her, others wanted her out. I didn't comment. I didn't have to. Karen was bleeding support, and this time, I wasn't lifting a finger. The call came the next morning. Amanda Cho again, her tone sharper this time, more clipped. We've concluded the preliminary review. I'll be forwarding an official report to your attorney this afternoon, she said. You were correct. The HOA submitted falsified utility maps and misrepresented property lines in multiple filings. This isn't just a civil issue anymore. It's fraud involving county funds. I thanked her and hung up, letting the weight of it settle in. Karen hadn't just crossed a line. She'd leapt over it, dragged her entire board behind her, and landed smack in criminal territory. Rachel called minutes later. They're opening a formal investigation. There may be charges. In the meantime, I recommend you file suit, not just for trespassing and unauthorized infrastructure, but for restitution. You've got damages now, and you're entitled to recover them. By that afternoon, we had filed. The complaint named the Silver Willows HOA and Karen Hurling in her official and individual capacities. It demanded compensation for land misuse, punitive damages for malicious interference with property rights, and an emergency injunction to halt all use of the easement. I signed the papers with an old ballpoint pen my uncle used to keep on the desk. Felt right. Then, because petty satisfaction still had a place in my toolbox, I installed a new sign on the gate. Private land, no HOA access, cameras active. Fraud investigation pending. I didn't expect it to go unnoticed, and it didn't. That night, the cameras caught two men skulking along the edge of my property line with flashlights. One of them tried to cover the lens with a baseball cap. The other dumped a pile of broken cinder blocks right in front of the gate before jogging back to their truck. Dumb move. They left their license plate perfectly framed in the footage. I called the sheriff's department. Again. But this time, instead of dismissing it, they sent a deputy out within the hour. A different one. Not the guy Karen played poker with on Sundays. This one actually reviewed the footage, took statements, and promised follow-up. You'll be contacted by the detective unit, he said. Looks like targeted harassment to me. Rachel filed an addendum to our complaint the next day, attaching the footage and plate number. Meanwhile, Amanda's report had reached the zoning board, and things started unraveling fast. Silver Willows received a notice of audit from the county. Their last 5 years of infrastructure grants were placed under review. And Karen. She went silent. No posts, no responses, no smiling at block parties. But the damage was already rippling. A week later, I received a knock on the door. This time, it wasn't law enforcement or a neighbor. It was a man in a blazer, sweating through his shirt, carrying a legal pad. Introduced himself as Mark Dell, HOA board treasurer. I just wanted to talk, he said, glancing nervously over his shoulder. This whole situation, we didn't know. Didn't know what? That the easement was revoked, that the filings were questionable. Karen handled all that herself. We just trusted her. I let him squirm. He deserved it. She didn't tell you the road wasn't public. He swallowed. She said it was a legacy right, that no one had ever challenged it. We assumed. You assumed wrong. He looked down. We're holding an emergency board meeting. She might be removed. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. And if there's anything we can do to fix this, you can stop driving on my land. That's a start. He nodded, retreating like a man who just realized his house was built on a sinkhole. I closed the door and leaned against it, exhaling for the first time in weeks. The tide was turning. Finally. The summons came on a gray Thursday morning, folded neatly in a white envelope with county letterhead. Karen Hurling, Silver Willows HOA, and unknown individuals acting in concert were officially named as defendants in the civil suit. A court date was set 6 weeks out, but the gears were already grinding. Rachel called me with an edge of triumph in her voice. They've got 30 days to respond, but I doubt they'll have a coherent defense. We're filing an injunction to block all traffic through your road effective immediately. If anyone trespasses now, it's not just civil, it's contempt of court. That night, I made a pot of coffee and watched the camera feeds. All was still. No cinder blocks, no shadowy pickups, just wind brushing through the trees and the occasional flicker of headlights on the far-off county road. The storm was quieting, or more likely coiling before the final strike. The next day, a process server posted notices on the HOA bulletin board and at the main clubhouse. According to someone who lived near the signpost, Karen tore it down within an hour and called it slander. She tried to rally support, but the residents weren't buying it anymore. Too much smoke, too many whispers. And then came the audit. A full team from the county finance office rolled up in marked cars and began going through HOA records. A laptop was seized, bank statements requested. The treasurer, Mark Dell, resigned on the spot. His replacement, some nervous woman named Lisa, sent out an email blast to all residents that read like a hostage note. We are cooperating fully with county investigators and encourage all homeowners to remain patient as this matter is resolved. But Karen? She was nowhere. She'd stopped answering her phone. Her blinds stayed shut. Rumor was she'd already contacted a defense attorney, one who specialized in real estate fraud. Meanwhile, Rachel got a call from a deputy DA who'd been monitoring the civil suit closely. They're preparing a parallel criminal case, she said. Forgery, misuse of public funds, possibly even wire fraud, depending on how the grant applications were submitted. I sat in my kitchen with the phone to my ear, staring out at the dusty gravel road that started it all. How long does something like that take? A while, but the evidence is solid. We've got the forged letter, the fake utility map, the grant forms. Your cameras caught half the harassment. If they want to make an example of her, they will. And then, just when I thought it couldn't escalate further, it did. One of the county engineers reached out directly, an older guy I'd met once during a zoning board hearing. He asked if I had ever approved or signed anything that allowed a fiber optic line to run through my lower property. No, I said. Why? He paused, then sighed. Because that line was laid last year. The permit application lists your signature. He sent a copy. It was the same ghost handwriting I'd seen on the fake uncle letter. Shaky, inconsistent, a crude attempt to forge my name. They'd used it to get county approval for utility work on my land. That was it. Rachel added forgery and fraudulent permitting to the lawsuit. The county flagged the utility provider, who immediately shut down maintenance access through my lot pending an investigation. My road was now legally closed. The gate, locked tight and monitored. And Karen. Her world was about to shrink to the size of a courtroom chair. The courtroom was packed. It was one of those small county courthouses with wood-paneled walls, humming fluorescent lights, and an air that always smelled faintly of mildew and anxiety. I sat on the left side with Rachel, a stack of documentation resting beside us, every page marked and tabbed like a war manual. Karen sat across the aisle, rigid and ghost-pale, flanked by a suit who looked like he billed by the syllable. The judge, a sharp-eyed woman in her 60s with a voice that could slice drywall, wasted no time. She'd read the filings. She'd seen the footage. This wasn't a case of he said, she said. This was a collision of lies and documentation, and Karen had brought a bicycle to a tank fight. Rachel led with the revoked easement deed and land survey. Then came the footage, the trespassing, the cinder blocks, the car plates, the HOA emails discussing legacy access as if they were making it up on the fly, the forged signature from the utility permit. And then, Rachel's trump card, the notarized letter from my late uncle declaring the easement void as of 1998, submitted to both the county and the HOA. When Karen's lawyer tried to argue customary use and neighborhood precedent, the judge raised an eyebrow. Precedent does not override recorded revocation, forged documents, or misappropriation of county funds, she said. You may sit down. It only got worse. The county auditor testified next. His report detailed over $100,000 in improperly claimed grant funds tied to roadwork and drainage projects on my land. He highlighted the exact years, receipts, and falsified maps submitted under Karen's oversight. Finally, Amanda Cho took the stand. Calm, precise, unshakable. She laid out the chain of fraud, from the fake permit application to the utility work. She confirmed that a criminal investigation was already underway, and that the evidence pointed directly at Karen as the orchestrator. Karen didn't speak. Her lawyer didn't dare put her on the stand. The judge recessed for barely 30 minutes before returning with the ruling. Her voice was crisp, final, and loud enough to echo. This court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Matthew Andrews, on all counts. The HOA is ordered to pay damages totaling $1,150,000 for illegal use, infrastructure intrusion, and emotional distress. Furthermore, a permanent injunction is issued against any use of the gravel road by the HOA or its members. Lastly, the forged documents submitted by the defendant will be referred to the district attorney's office for criminal prosecution. I didn't move. Not at first. I just sat there, stunned by the weight of it all finally settling, like concrete curing under your boots. Karen didn't look at me. She just stared ahead, hands clenched in her lap, as if she'd aged 10 years in 1 hour. I didn't feel sorry for her. Not even a little. Outside the courthouse, news crews had gathered. Apparently the phrase, HOA president faces felony charges, had legs. Rachel gave a statement. I didn't. I just walked to my truck, climbed in, and drove home. At sunset, I stood at the base of my property, near the gate that started it all. I had a new sign made. Not subtle, not polite, just honest. Private land. No HOA access. No exceptions. Trespassers will be prosecuted. A final line drawn in gravel and steel.